Hello guys, welcome back. I am finally here to do what I've been promising now for what seems like forever, and that is to go over my top 25 albums of 2015. And I started it 2 weeks ago with the countdown, number 50 through number 26, and we took a week off because of Christmas. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas. I had a great time in Colorado with my family. Just spent so much time with my sister and her husband and my nieces and the entire family, and it was just wonderful. So if you're watching, thank you so much for a wonderful trip to Colorado and just such a fantastic Christmas. My nieces just subscribed to me, so welcome to Jeanette. And anyway, it's great to be back, and as I've been promising for some time now, I'm going to count down my top 25 albums of this past year, and also go over the contest results for the Season of Giving contest that I started. My gosh, it seems like forever ago now, maybe 2 months almost. I think that thing started out, but it actually stopped 2 weeks ago, so there were no more entries. But believe it or not, I just found out who the winner was because I intentionally only took a very quick glance into the entries, and I just officially have counted them all up, so I do know who won. And I can't wait to get to that point, so stick around for the end. I didn't have a ton of entries because it was a very difficult contest. You really had to be a pretty loyal viewer to this channel to even have any chance. I did have a few people take a stab at it who probably haven't watched that many of my videos, and thank you so much for that. It meant a great deal to me. For example, Bobby Z, who you don't have a channel anymore. You've moved on from YouTube and just strictly sticking to your friends on Facebook, and I totally get that. But you took a stab at it and kind of used it as a platform to talk about albums you think I might like, which is fantastic because I'm always looking for new music, and that's what this chart really is all about, is to share my love of new music. And it's a big part of this entire channel, and you did a great job, so thanks Robert for that. I call you Bobby because of your channel, but it's Robert, and most people know who Robert is from the YouTube vinyl community. So anyway, I'm not going to get into too much detail at this point about the contest. I'm going to save it for the end, and I don't want this video to go super long, so I'm going to cut down on the chatter in between and too much of my rambling, my usual rambling on, and just get right to the soup and nuts of this top 25 list. It was a fantastic year in music. I had so much fun. If you remember from my previous video, I had a list of about 165 to 170 albums to pick from that I actually purchased this year, either on CD or vinyl, most of them vinyl. And it is a daunting task to narrow that down to 50 because it really was a great year in music. So anything you see on this 25 is certainly among my favorite, the best music of the past year. And it's very difficult to rank, but I took my best attempt to really take a look at the entire package, not just a particular song or my biases because it's been a lifelong favorite or anything of that nature. I really took a long, hard look at each album, and there are specific reasons that I won't be able to get into why one is rated higher than the other, but just know that I did put a lot of thought into this, and hopefully that's good enough for everybody. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. We left off with number 26 last week, and we're going to dive right back into it, or 2 weeks ago, so we're going to dive right back into it. Okay, so a few people did mention this, and that would make my top 10, and it did not. It's a good album, but it does land at number 25, and that is Noel Gallagher's Flying Birds. This is Chasing Yesterday. Quickly, I will say this is probably the best post-Oasis album from either of the Gallagher brothers so far. It is surprisingly good, surprisingly very mainstream, easy to listen to, and it has a lot of good hooks and really very Oasis sounding. So if you dig Oasis, you're really going to like this record. And it did kind of wow me in the beginning, and then it kind of tapered off because the guy's such a jerk. I mean, I just said I'm not going to be biased, but it's very, very difficult with these Gallagher brothers because they are really total assholes, and I can't sugarcoat that. They hate everybody in the music industry except for themselves, and it's so difficult for me to like these guys. But just from a pure music standpoint, it is a very, very solid album, and I've been an Oasis fan for a very long time. So taking out the fact that the guy would end up dead last in the likability portion of my contest, he did land in my top 25 with Chasing Yesterday, and it is a mighty fine album, so I do encourage you to check that out if you've ever been an Oasis fan. Okay, number 24 is, I pronounced this wrong earlier when I was talking about this album. This guy's name is Sufjan Stevens. I'm probably still saying it slightly wrong. It just seems to not roll off my tongue well. Sufjan Stevens, Carrie and Lowell. And I would not be surprised if this is many people's #1 album of the year, and I have seen it on many of the top albums of the year list. I have not had it that long. I was a very late comer to this guy, a very late comer to this album, so personally I've only heard it 3 times. But right away it was very deeply emotional, a very caring, heartfelt, thoughtful album, and certainly worth your attention if you like that type of very, very powerful, heartfelt, family-oriented, deeply emotional songs, and even sometimes very difficult and painful to listen to, but this is a very, very powerful album. And I do think over time it probably will work its way up higher and higher on the list, but for now I placed it at number 24. Number 23. This is a tough one for me because there was one person that put it in my top 10, and I thought there might be more because I have raved about this band from Australia for a long time. I did a big deal when this album came out, and the 2013 album that they put out was my #1 album of the year without hesitation, and it didn't even come out on vinyl. I only have the CD to this day because that's all you can get. But the number 23 album this year for me is 12/4 by the Paper Kites. It is good, really good, and I still am so passionate about this band because I really do love them. They had 2 or 3 EPs out prior to their debut album 2 years ago, which they're all phenomenal, and I think I'm basing this on how much I love their previous work. If this was a standalone album or a debut album or the first time I'd ever heard this band, it might be higher, but in this case it doesn't live up to the previous work for me. So number 23 is 12/4 by the Paper Kites, but I still love this album, so does not discount or diminish any of my previous praise for the Paper Kites. Still a very, very great up-and-coming band from Down Under, and I can't wait to see what they'll do next. Alright, number 22 is an album that I absolutely fell in love with when I first heard it, and then a little bit over time, this came out early in the year, over time it maybe seemed a little bit too mainstream to me, or maybe not original enough. So I'm trying to be very subjective here, and I'm rating at number 22, Peace, Happy People. And this is an album that probably is a little bit harder to find, because I don't think this got a very wide US release. This, I believe, is a UK band. I didn't make a lot of notes for this video, guys, so I don't have details about where exactly a lot of these people are from, but Peace is a band that so far has not really cracked America, but I would say it's definitely worth checking out. It's very mainstream rock oriented, and alternative radio, you would think in this country, would just eat it up. So I do hope that they would be so inclined to release some of their music a little bit more widely here in America. I think it is on Spotify, but I actually don't. I was looking this up in Colorado because I wanted to share this with my sister, and we both have Spotify, and we couldn't find it. So we either looked wrong or it's not on Spotify. So I don't think this will be easy to find, but you could certainly get it from eBay, or you could certainly get it from Amazon UK. And I would maybe check out YouTube and see if this is your cup of tea, but I really dig the album, and it rated pretty dang high on my list, even though it did slip a little bit through time. My friend Richie was the one that kind of got me into Peace, so thanks for that, Richie. Alright, moving up the list here, number 21, another album I had very, very high hopes for, and I would say only maybe slightly disappointed because their first album is, again, so good that it was a very hard benchmark to equal. But there's enough good stuff on this where for our longest time I thought this would easily make my top 10, but it did slip down a little bit after a few more listens, and that is the latest album from Nightbeds, Ivywild. fantastic double album on white vinyl from Dead Oceans. Still a really, really, really powerful, great album, and again, just chock full of fantastic songs. This is one of those albums that just kind of gets better as the album goes on. There's a couple dodgy songs maybe in the middle, but the last 4 or 5 just kind of take you right back to that love of it that you had from the beginning. So maybe my only criticism of this one is it just is a little bit long. There's a lot of tracks on here. I think there's 14 or 15 songs, and it does tend to kind of meander on a little bit too long for me. Maybe a couple throwaway tracks on there. So number 21 is Nightbeds. All right, number 20, great affection for the next album because it was such a big what's the word I'm looking for? Highly anticipated album for me, and it's been a lifelong love of mine, and that is Mr. Jeff Lynne, or ELO. This one he's calling Jeff Lynne's ELO. Alone in the Universe comes in at number 20. I think this might surprise people how high this is up on the list, but it might also surprise you if you haven't heard this album just how damn good it is. You know, it's not going to change the world. It's not going to be any different than what you might expect, but it's just really good. Every song on here is just a toe tapper. It just sounds exactly like it should. Every song on here is rather short, but my only criticism of this album is it just doesn't have that total classic ELO sound. It's really a Jeff Lynne solo album, and he plays every instrument, he wrote every song. It is Jeff Lynne from start to end without any doubt. So I don't really mean that as a criticism, but I'm just saying from the glory days of ELO, I would like to see a little bit more of that classic rock, experimental edge that ELO had that really defined their sound. That's the only thing lacking from this, but apart from that, this is really, really probably one of the more enjoyable albums I've heard in a long time because you can put it on the first listen, you don't have to think about it. It's not like you have to try to like it, it's just instantly likable. And I really got to tip my hat to Jeff Lynne for coming back after all these years, attaching his name to ELO again, and coming up with something so good. So really, if you've ever been an ELO fan, check out this album, Alone in the Universe. It's well worth it and a worthy addition to their catalog. So well done, Jeff Lynne. All right, number 19. This album surpasses their debut for me. I was only maybe about half on their debut album. This one really took it up a level, so I got to give this band props for kind of coming back very strong. Now I know their first album for most people is extremely well loved, but for me this one's better, and that is Church's Every Eye Open. Love the cover, first of all. It reminds me of New Order. Anyway, this is a fantastic new album. It hasn't been out super long, maybe 4 months, and this one is again just instantly likable. Every track out on it is got a great beat. It's danceable, it's fun, it's great to work out to, it's great to have in the car. This is really good. So I would say if you like the first album, in my opinion, you're going to like this one every bit as much, and I like it even more. So very high praise for the new Church's album, Every Eye Open, at number 19. Now, speaking of New Order, number 18 is the latest New Order album, and that album is called Music Complete. This probably could have easily made my top 10. I just haven't had it that long, and I haven't really given it the proper attention it deserves because I've been away from home so much that I haven't been able to hear it as much as I'd like to, but there are some dynamite songs on this album. This is a very strong New Order album, and I would put this among their best work, really, far better than their previous album. And, Peter Hook leaving the band didn't seem to hurt them whatsoever. It kind of seems to me like Bernard Sumner and Peter Hook were just always clashing in the studio, had very different ideas about the direction of the songs, and without him, it just really all came together. Now, of course, I'm still a big Peter Hook fan, but without them, New Order, I think, is going to do incredibly well. And this is a fantastic album that came in very high on my list and probably, again, could have easily gone higher had I heard it a little bit more. So New Order, Music Complete, number 18. All right, next one up is number 17. This is an artist that I think I've mentioned once or twice on my channel. No one put it in my top 10, which is a little surprising because I did rave about this artist quite a big deal when I got this album. But there's so much, you know, when you're talking about as much music as I buy, it's very difficult to say, okay, well, I think James is going to like this more than the other. I get it. It would be hard. But this artist is, again, only 2 albums, but I think he's got a great future. Very young Englishman, East India Youth. And this is Culture of Volume, number 17. Second album in 2 years, and I think it's a slight improvement from the debut album. Very similar tone, but every bit as good. And wow, does it match my my jumper here? But fantastic. I'm going to probably have to go into more detail on this guy later on because this is a very easy artist to overlook. He's not going to flash you, something that you're just going to instantly gravitate towards. Deserves a lot more attention in the U.S. I don't know what he does overseas in the U.K. or Europe, but here it seems like he doesn't get a tremendous amount of attention, and this is really, really good stuff. So, East India Youth, it is one guy, I forget the name. He's kind of a one-man wrecking crew, if you will, a multi-instrumentalist, electronic guy, but fantastic. Culture Volume number 17, so check that out. All right, number 16. Nobody put this in my top 10 either, which really surprised me because, you know, I've been a very passionate, lifelong fan of the next artist, but in his other band. This was the debut album from, I'm going to take this one out, Guy Garvey, Courting the Squall. And the reason I took it out of the little sleeve I had is because this happens to be a lenticular cover, and it's just so cool. Really completely different than what you would hear from Elbow. And I got to give Guy Garvey credit that he didn't just put out another Elbow album and call it Guy Garvey Solo. This is different. This is really radically different. And while I can't say I love every track, I gave him extra points, if you will, because it is quite unusual. I mean, obviously it's still his voice and it's still his songwriting style, but the music, he's got harps and all kinds of crazy stuff going on in this album. So I would say even if you've been a mild Elbow fan and you can appreciate the talent of Guy Garvey as a songwriter and somebody who isn't afraid to take chances and really, really stands out. It's just criminal how underrated Elbow is in the U.S., more so than any other band out there. Elbow deserves every single bit of attention they get in the UK, and they need some of it here in the US, and I'm going to say it until they get it. Sorry, but I just feel so passionate about Guy Garvey and Elbow. Number 16, Courting the Squall. Number 15, I really wasn't even going to include this album because I only got it very, very late in the game, about 2 weeks prior to the time I had to finish this list. And that's really unfair because I'm saying often throughout this that I need to hear it more and more, but I am such a big fan of this band. Ghost Stories landed in the top, I think 5 albums last year for me. The new album just came out about 3 weeks ago. A Head Full of Dreams I'm putting in at number 15. I think it may actually go down a little bit because this is not that great of an album for me, probably, if I'm being dead honest with you, but it doesn't affect the top 10, so I just didn't even bother with it. About half of it I really, really like, and the other half is just way too commercial for me. I like Coldplay when they really sound like classic Coldplay. That's why I really connected with Ghost Stories, because it's such a deeply emotional, powerful, impactful sound that really only Chris Martin could pull off, because anybody else is going to come off as really hokey. But this album is just way too pop. And for me, it reminds me of like Milo Xyloto, and that's my least favorite Coldplay album. This is better than Milo Xyloto, I will definitely say that. But there's just way too much pop on here. It did come with a little holographic sticker. I did order this directly from their website, so I got it even later than I probably could have if I had bought it at a store. Anyway, Coldplay, A Head Full of Dreams. I'll stick with it at number 15. I'll always be a fan. A lot of people are saying this is their final album. I don't buy it. But we'll see. I think Chris Martin might do a solo album. They'll come back at some point. They're all very young. All right, moving on. Number 14. This is an album that I talked a few people into checking out. I know my friend James Lack purchased this album himself because of my constant badgering. Check out this guy, check out this guy. I know you're going to like him, and I think that you do like him now. Jose Gonzalez. James, you always say his name wrong. I got to give you a little bit of a rubbing there. It's not Gonzalo. It's Gonzalez. And I think it's just a slip of the tongue for you. And probably a lot easier for me to say Gonzalez here in the U.S. than it is in the U.K. But Vestiges and Claws is the third solo album from Junip's Jose Gonzalez, and this is his best album. It really is really, really good. If you like folk music, you're going to like this, but it's really folk kind of amped up. Great songwriter, great lyrics, very, very easy to relate to. And I didn't even realize until someone told me that this guy was Scandinavian. Apparently he was born of Spanish descent, but his family moved to Denmark or Sweden at a very young age. And he lists on his website that he's from Denmark or Sweden, which I thought was very cool. So I included him in my Artists You Should Know Scandinavian edition. But this is a great album. It's easily could be in my top 10, but there's just such a good year in music that Vestiges and Claws didn't quite make the top 10, but it landed at number 14. So let's see, did anybody put this in my top 10? Yeah, we had one person put it in my top 10, so I can't blame you there. All right, moving on to number 13. Really, really big surprise on this one because I was only kind of lukewarm on the previous two albums that I purchased. And listening to them again, I think I was very dismissive of it, but this is no doubt their best album. It's the self-titled album from the Helio Sequence. I've been a fan, but just a mild fan. This album just really knocked it out of the park for me. I think it's just fantastic. This is on the Sub Pop label. This is a loser edition. I believe it's this color gold vinyl here. I'm not in the effort of time going to pull out any of these cool colors, but musically this is very dreamy. If you like dream pop, if you like that genre, very easy to listen to. You can kind of float away and disappear in this kind of music, but you can still understand the lyrics. It's not shoegaze. It's not that heavy distorted guitars. It's just really, really light, fluffy, very, very soothing type music for me. This is really cool stuff and quite a surprise for me, and I would have never guessed in a million years that it would be so high on my list when I bought it. But it was just a standout album for me. So number 13 belongs to the Helio Sequence, and that is a self-titled album on Sub Pop that came out this year. All right, we're almost there, guys. Number 12, and I said this to a friend of mine the other day, and if this wasn't an album of covers, this would probably be my number one album of the year. But putting all things into perspective, being that he didn't write any of these songs, they're all cover tracks. I didn't feel comfortable putting it in my top 10, and I certainly didn't feel comfortable putting it as my number one. But had he wrote these songs, I think this would easily be my number one album of the year because it is so well interpreted, and he puts his own twist on an album that I don't even really honestly care for. That's pretty remarkable. Ryan Adams, 1989, is... If you don't like Taylor Swift, forget about that. You don't have to be a Taylor Swift fan. You don't have to be a fan of her songs or all of her moaning and groaning and complaining about boys and all that crap that she's into. Forget it. He puts his own twist on these songs, and he makes them his own. And he did have the endorsement of Taylor Swift, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I mean, granted, I'm probably a little bit biased because I am a big, big fan of Ryan Adams. But it's so well done. For me, being not even a slightest bit fan of Taylor Swift, she's really more annoying to me than anything. And for me to relate to these songs and get it behind them so well, it's remarkable. So Ryan Adams, 1989, an album of covers from Taylor Swift, ends up at number 12 on my list. All right, one more before we get to the big top 10 reveal. A lot of people, well, not a lot, 4 people put this in my top 10 and only missed it by 1, so it is a bit of a real guessing game. Probably my favorite singer-songwriter at this moment in time, and you know how much I love this guy, and I understand why a lot of people put it in my top 10 because I do rave about this guy a lot. This one just fell a little bit short from his previous release, but that's the latest album from John Grant, Grey Tickle's Black Pressure. Kind of an awful album cover. Sorry, John, if you're watching, but I didn't get the album cover too much. But it is you. It really is you. And I do get it to a point, but it's just not enjoyable. But the music is enjoyable. And, you know, it's just so hard to be critical of John Grant because this guy stands out like nobody else to me. You know, he just lays it all on line lyrically. He is not afraid to speak his mind, and he does it in a way that's not in your face, but if you read between the lines, this guy's been through a lot in his life. And listening to his music is like listening to someone's life story. And nobody does it better than John Grant, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to singer-songwriter. The guy is amazing, and number 11 belongs to you this year, my friend, and well deserved. And I cannot wait to see what you do next, because every album surprises me. It takes me to a different level, and in a way brings me right back to where you started with the Czars in Denver all those years ago. And I do hope that you'll watch the video, and I hope you know how much I've appreciated your music through the years. Alright, number 10. This is going to shock a lot of people, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people of the 10 that entered my contest put this either number 1 or either from number 1 through number 10, but most of them very high. May surprise you. Sit down if you're not sitting down. Number 10 belongs to Adele, 25. And you're saying, okay, James, that's bullshit. I'm going to call foul here because you rave about Adele more than anybody I know. Well, yes, I do, but I get caught up in the hype a little bit. And what can I say? You know, Adele is a phenomenon, and I do get caught up in the hype a little bit, but there were a few albums probably better than that this year, and I have to be realistic and I have to be honest with myself. As much as I love this lady and I appreciate all that she does, there were a few albums that were better than that this year. This maybe is just a small step below 21 for me, but you know, it's Adele. It's already sold 7 million copies in the US, close to 8 million copies. It took 21 over a year to do that. It's just a worldwide hit. And you know, when one of your favorite artists reaches that level of success, and I've been a fan since her very first single, when she was a nobody, when you see someone you love explode to that level, you do get caught up in it a little bit, and that's all it really is. But I have no shame, and I have no problem saying that I love this album, and I love Adele, and it has a rightful place in my top 10 at number 10. Number 9 is an artist I had never heard of before 2015. She did have a couple of EPs out prior to this year, but this album took everything to another level, and she got a lot of critical acclaim and a lot of new fans from Sometimes I Sit and Think, and Sometimes I Just Sit. The most creative album title of the year belongs to Courtney Barnett, and I would encourage a lot of people to hear this album that maybe haven't heard it yet. It blew me away. At first listen, I was like, who is that? And boy, am I so glad that I was able to discover this artist this past year, because it is a phenomenal album. I know I'm not going into detail here, but I know you guys don't want to be here for an hour either, so I'm trying just to give you a little bit of little bits of information. So Courtney Barnett, number 9. Number 8, I can go pretty fast, and the next one, because I've talked a lot about these next artists. Number 8 belongs to Richard Hawley, Hollow Meadows. Probably no surprise to a lot of you, it's in my top 10. One of my favorite artists going right now. I love this guy. I did a whole video on him. I now own everything he's got, except for 2 records that I'm missing on vinyl, and I'm determined someday I'm going to own them. It's just way out of my price range. So the new album is called Hollow Meadows. Just go back a few videos and you can see a more detailed description about this and all of his music on my channel. So number 8 belongs to Richard Hawley. Alright, number 7 is an album that I think maybe some people put, 2 people put as my number 1, so you're just a little off. And who knows, you know, really, when it's all said and done, this maybe next week could be my number 1. And I do go on a lot about this band, there's no doubt, but this first album is the first of 2 releases they had this year. within 7 weeks, Beach House, Depression Cherry lands at number 7. And I think every single person who entered my contest, yep, I'm glancing at it here, every single person who entered my contest put this in the top 10. So well done, including you, Robert. All right, the next one, only one person. I got to give this person credit. Karsten, you added this to my top 10. You were the only person who caught on, maybe because you're from the general area of this guy, and you know when I speak of him, I speak at a very, very fond level, and that is Asbjorn, Pseudo Visions. This came in at number 6. So, you know, go back to my Artist You Should Know Scandinavian edition. It's about 5 videos back, I think, and you can see more about Asbjorn. I know I'm not saying it 100% right, Karsten, but my tongue just doesn't roll like that, being from the U.S., so give it my best shot, and just absolutely love this album. Whoever wins the contest, please don't pick it, because it would be nearly impossible to get you a copy, because you've got to get it from Denmark, I think it is, or maybe somewhere out in the Scandinavian area, and it would cost a fortune, so you know, it's probably not your cup of tea anyway, whoever wins, but anyway, if you want it that bad, I'll find you a copy. But Pseudo Visions is on Spotify, it is on most of the music streaming services, it is on iTunes, so that's probably your best bet on how to listen to this album, and it is fantastic. Alright, number 5, sorry this is going so long here, but number 5 is an album, again, that I've talked a lot about, and I had a whole contest involved around it, and that is Tame Impala's Currents. This was part of my summer contest when I was just doing a random contest, because I accidentally got 2 copies of it and decided to do a contest with it. Fantastic. Big improvement for me from their previous album, and it's just a dynamite record. I'll just leave it at that. If you, for some reason, have not heard Tame Impala, this would be a fantastic choice for whoever wins the contest. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people picked it in my top 10, so I think most of you know how much I like that album. Alright, number 4 might be a bit of a surprise. Number 4 belongs to the wonderful, talented, glorious, beautiful, seductive, everything you want to know, Melody Gardot, Currency of Man. I just love Melody Gardot, and this one is oh my god, it is just the best album she's ever put out, bar none. And I just love it from beginning to end. It's her longest album. It's a double LP. And she really goes out on a limb here and changes her sound quite a bit from the previous album especially. And it's more bluesy and raw, and definitely more focused and serious, and it's just everything I wanted it to be. So Melody Gardot, not big in the US, but she deserves so many more fans than she has. So all I can say is, if you don't know Melody Gardot, do yourself a favor and get to know this album, or any of her work really. She's really primarily kind of a jazzy artist, but this album has a more bluesy guitar edge to it, and it's a lot more deep and raw, and I absolutely love it. Currency of Man comes in at number 4. This one is a real shocker to me, because not one person put it in my top 10, and I was so surprised, because I raved about this guy at least twice on my channel. But again, I know how difficult it is, because I go on about so many different artists, but number 3 belongs to Don Gibson, Carnation. Nobody put this in my top 10. I just couldn't believe it. Go back a few videos and you'll find out more about Don Gibson. I think he was in the 2nd or 3rd Artist You Should Know video, and I see the clock running here at 34 minutes. I gotta speed it up, so I'll just leave it at that. Go back, hear more about Don Gibson. I love this album. I loved his previous album. I loved his debut album. I love Don Gibson. It's phenomenal. It's number 3. I play it until I can't stand it anymore. Alright, only 2 left. A lot of people probably would easily put this as my number 1. I know, Albert, you put this as my number 1. You were the only one, though, but I'm a little surprised, because this album made a lot of people's top 10. In fact, almost everyone I know put this album in the top 10. Father John Misty, I Love You, Honey Bear. Fantastic. What can you say? I think everybody's heard all there needs to be said about this guy. It's just phenomenal. It is really, really hard not to have this as my #1 album. But there was one that just really, really captivated me this year, even a little bit more so. So this one lands at #2. Father John Misty, I Love You, Honey Bear. Alright, #1. Only one person put this as my #1 album of the year, and I gotta give you another shout out, Karsten, because even though I will say you're not going to win the contest, and I guess that's no great surprise to you, you were the only person to pick this as my #1 album of the year, and only one of a handful of people that put it in my top 10. So kudos to you for paying attention. And I think you went back and saw on Facebook that I posted that it would probably be my #1 album of the year. I did that once in the vinyl community on Facebook. And anyway, it is Riley Walker, Primrose Green. There's just something magical about this album to me, and it's another one of those real surprises because I'd never heard of Riley Walker before 2015, so it was one of those kind of blind buys. Somebody recommended it to me. I think it was Chris in Germany said he really liked this album, so I'm like, I like Chris's taste. I'm going to give it a try. Oh, I just couldn't believe it. I was blown away. It's so good. It's a folk album. It's reminiscent of Van Morrison, or it's reminiscent of Nick Drake, or, you know, any of that type of a genre. But this guy is a remarkable player. He's a remarkable songwriter. It is not simple folk music. This is really, really high stuff. And I'm just proud to hold it in my hands and proud to say this is my album of the year. And I guess I like surprises. I like these blind buys, but there was just something special about it because I didn't expect it. I expected to like Father John Misty, and I'd heard so many good things about it that, you know, this one was, you know, it's hard to separate the two, but I guess because it was such a surprise to me and new, that's why I put it #1. So Primrose Green, #1 album of the year for me. Congratulations, Riley Walker, and thank you, Riley Walker, for introducing me to such fantastic music. Alright, so let's get to the contest. Stick with me. I'll make a couple quick announcements at the end. I'm going to go through the order in which I received them. Ben Simpson, you entered first, so thank you so much, Ben. Your entry was so funny. It had smoke machines and fancy editing and comedy and bleach and whatever else it had in it, and you did remarkably well. I know how much work you put into it. You really did your homework and steadied up, and you entered with 7 points. You got 7 correct entries. You entered with Riley Walker, Melody Gardot, Tame Impala, Beach House, Richard Hawley, Courtney Barnett, and Adele. So well done, Ben. Phenomenal work. 7 out of 10. What can I say? We'll find out at the end if that's enough. Ross Goodall was my second entry. Thank you, Ross, for entering. I think a couple of these you kind of threw in just because you were a little bit hopeful. Maybe that, like ELO, Jeff Lynne's ELO, knowing it probably wouldn't make my top 10, but you just wanted to put a plug in for Jeff Lynne. Nothing wrong with that. But you did end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. So again, thank you for doing your research, paying attention, commenting on a lot of my videos. You're a loyal viewer, and I can't thank you enough. Sarah, 60s Girl 96, who is a relatively new subscriber, so I know you probably wouldn't have done as well as some of the others. You did come in with 3 points. You got Melody Gardot, Beach House, and Adele. So well done, Sarah. I'm really happy to have you on my channel. Thanks for all your comments. And for someone who's been only viewing for such a little time, I thought you did really, really good. So no prize this time, Sarah, but thank you again for entering, and I just think you're adorable. Rockboy680, James was the next entry, and what can I say, James? You probably know me as well as anybody because I don't think there's a single video you haven't commented on this year, maybe 1 or 2. You are a faithful viewer. Of course, we're good friends, and we do talk a lot about music, so it does not surprise me that you guessed correctly Riley Walker, Father John Misty, Melody Gardot, Tame Impala, Beach House, Richard Hawley, Courtney Barnett, and Adele. A couple of them in the right order, but not the top ones. You did guess Courtney Barnett correctly at number 9, and Tame Impala correctly at number 4. Random luck, I'm sure. But that gave you a total of 8 points, 8 correct entries. So, sorry, Ben, that does eliminate you. But really, really fantastic job. on for James to get 8 out of 10. That really shows me, James, that you've been paying attention to new music, and it means a lot to me because I guess I do try to push you into new music a little bit. And for you to get that many correct really means a great deal that you are paying attention to what's important to me. So thank you again, James, for all you do. And, you know, just fantastic. I can't believe you got 8. I was shocked, really. Robert Z, we've talked about. Robert, you got a couple of them right. You got Tame Impala and Beach House correct. You know, you were not going to enter because you just thought it would be a waste of your time, but I had so much fun watching your video, man. It was just a delight. So thank you very much. And I think you knew that it probably wouldn't be very close, but I am paying attention to some of the other recommendations that you had for me, so thank you for that more than anything. Albert Gafanti, Albert, you're a newer friend of mine that's been around for maybe 4 or 5 months, but boy, oh boy, do you pay attention, almost to a fault, because I think you get a little bit mixed signals from me because you're very, very interested in my taste, and it really shows because you came so close to winning. I really, really got to give it to you. You only missed by 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 6 correct, but the others were right there. You know, you had Jose Gonzalez, and you had what else did you have? Night Beds and Helio Sequence, which just missed the top 10. So you could have easily won. And I think had I known you a little bit longer, maybe it would have been an advantage. I don't know, but thank you so much. You were the first one. It was your first video entry ever onto YouTube, so that, again, I applaud you for doing it. It was another hope of mine, and I would encourage somebody to make a video who's never made a video, so you really win a prize for doing that. Carson, I've mentioned you a couple times already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 correct. For someone who didn't want to play along, you really honestly did probably the best job of anybody. You got my number 1 correct, as I've mentioned. Nobody else did that. You got Melody Gardot correct. You got Tame Impala correct. You got Asbjorn correct. Beach House correct. Adele correct. What can I say? You know, for someone who said they didn't have any chance of winning and it was too hard, you almost won. So 3rd place, not so bad for someone who didn't think they were going to win, and you probably deserve a prize for the only person who guessed my correct number 1. Spin the Black Circle, Gene, I think another fairly new subscriber, got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 correct. That's not bad at all. You got Father John Misty, Tame Impala, Beach House, Courtney Barnett, and Adele. Well done there. And then finally, Jeremy, who I just begged. He was my winner last year. I did this contest on Facebook before I was making videos, and he won my contest last year with guessing 7 correct. Didn't do as well this year, Jeremy. I think your heart wasn't into it as much. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 correct. You got Tame Impala, Beach House, Courtney Barnett, and Adele correct. I missed out on it this year, but hey, you were last year's winner, so I can't feel too bad about that. So, what does that say? James, Rockaboy680, you are the winner of this year's contest. Congratulations. Well deserved. I just couldn't. Jeremy won last year with 7, and when I got 7 from Ben, I'm like, well, for my first entry, it's over. Ben, you win. But you came along and got 8 somehow. I just don't know how you did it. So kudos to you, really. And it just goes to show you that our taste does line up quite a lot. So, James, you win the Season of Giving contest. Now, don't forget, you get to pick a friend, whoever that friend is, to also pick an album from my top 10 and send that to them. I'll send it for you, but it will really be in your honor. It comes from you, so I'll send it for you. You pick an album from my top 10, I'll send it off to you in England. So this is going to be expensive. It doesn't matter. I'm just happy somebody won. Thank you for everybody for participating. I hope you enjoyed my top 25. I hope you enjoyed the top 50. If anybody's interested, send me a message on here. I do have a separate list I can show you of every album that I purchased, alphabetical from A to Z, of albums from this year. If you want to know that, just shoot me a note and I'll find a way to private message you that. Or if we're friends on Facebook, I can easily get it to you. Just let me know you want it. watch both videos if you want to be reminded of what made my top 50, but there's about 130 albums that didn't make my top 50 that you might be interested in as well. So I had so much fun doing this, guys. I'm sorry this video is going to go 45 minutes, but I knew it was going to be kind of tough to go through 25 albums, also go through the contest, and make this short. So I hope you stuck with me. I'm really close to 500 subscribers. I need about 60 subscribers, and I've been promising for the longest time I'll do another contest at 500 subscribers. So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. Help me get to 500. The next contest is going to be much easier. It will be much more open for everybody. It will be video required, but it won't be, more about me. It'll be more about you. So this one was really more catered towards how much have you been paying attention to the albums I liked this year, and I wanted to reward someone for paying close attention to what's important to me this year. And I think every one of you, the 10 people that entered, did a remarkable job. So thank you again. Hope everybody has a very, very great year ahead. 2016 is going to be phenomenal. Can't wait to get started on new music again. And when I hit 500 subscribers, we'll come back. We'll do another fun contest together. And I hope everyone's enjoying the channel. So be safe. Have a great new year. And I can't wait until I come back with a more normal video. I think I know what it's going to be next week, but I'll leave it as a surprise. And I'll see you a week from now for a music collections video. So until then, take care of yourselves. Happy New Year. And bye for now.
It's much too early in the game. Ah, but I thought I'd ask you just the same. What are you doing